The question that everyone wants to know, not just in and around Ann Arbor, but certainly throughout college football, is the Bryce Underwood hype real? Is he really going to be that guy? Is he going to start right away? All of that kind of stuff. Now, the more that we get through Michigan spring ball, the more it kind of feels like, yes, the hype is absolutely real. Let's talk about Bryce Underwood here, a little bit about what Derrick Moore had to say about him, which I thought was really interesting. On this episode of Locked On Wolverines.
You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Wednesday. We are back and doing it. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. I'm your man on the ground, Isaiah Hole, publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group. And I was in Ann Arbor again today to talk to Jordan Marshall, Derrick Moore, and Justice Haynes. We'll hear a little bit from Justice Haynes in segment 2. But some really interesting stuff from those guys. And I think obviously the Bryce Underwood stuff, which came from both Jordan Marshall and Derrick Moore. But Derrick Moore, being a defensive player, had some things that I thought were particularly interesting. So I think that it behooves us to kind of listen to a little bit what he had to say, and then we'll react. So we'll do that right now.
Quarterback, what are your early impressions of Bryce so far?
What's that impression of Bryce? Like, what you mean?
Like, how's he looked?
And Bryce, it ain't really too much to talk about it, man. I get that question asked a lot, Bryce just been like, he just looked like a guy. He looked like he'd been here, like he'd been in college, really, He looking well out there. His ball placement is crazy, He been throwing dots all around practice lately. And, he just looked relaxed and comfortable, he just been doing this. So, I'm really excited for him as well going into this year, just for everybody to see what he can, show as a freshman.
Last week at Pro Day, Josiah he said about Bryce, he said basically good luck to Big Ten quarterbacks taking him down. How much does his size, when you being 6'4", 228, how much does that affect a defensive end or edge rusher to be able to bring down a guy like that?
It affects it a lot, Playing against a big quarterback, there's a lot of perspective. It's a lot of things you gotta goes into that. You gotta practice how we gotta tackle this quarterback. How we can get to him, things like that. But he can also run as well. He done ran around on us a little bit, so it's now that play ties into it too. All right, he's a good quarterback, physical quarterback. He can throw, he can run the ball. So now, all right, we got to find ways to, tackle him all together. Just not one guy. We all got to get to him. So, there's a lot of thought that goes into it.
You heard it there. Bryce Underwood giving the top-rated Michigan defense fits. I don't know. That's just kind of how I at least read it. That's what I take away from some of that. Also, the bumbling as I ask questions. I don't know why suddenly I become Hugh Grant in press conference interview situations and scrums, or I digress. Nonetheless, you can really get kind of a sense of, he had us in the first half, not going to lie, is kind of the first thing. Is talk about Bryce. It's oh man, there ain't too much to say about him. And before he says a whole bunch of stuff, right? Jordan Marshall was asked what which players are we not talking about that we need to be talking about, and he's like, Bryce Underwood. That's kind of I think we're talking about him, but I mean the fact that he's and it's the quarterback, which one? Bryce. I think that's all very encouraging, right? And it's one of those things where it's people are going to have to wait and see it. You're going to have to see it in person in the spring game, unless you want to wait a week, because apparently the spring game's not airing for a week until after it happens. So get down to the Big House on April 19th to go and see Bryce Underwood in person. But I mean, it's just, to me, you're hearing the right things, especially about Jordan Marshall talked about his maturity. Right, that you've seen, he came in, bowl prep, ingratiated himself to the team, but kind of kept his head down. And he said, now you see a guy who's matured into the idea of I know how to run this. I know what to do. And it's not a bravado. It's he's learned He's like, and now he's like, okay, now I feel like I can step into a leadership role. So you have that, and it just does make me like, I've been consistent, and I'm sure this will be over at Maize and Blue Review, some kind of something. But Dennis Fithian was asking some of us at the press conference, like, do you think that Bryce is going to start game one? I've been consistent since he came that I said I think it'll be, more like week 5. I guess we have to see what Mikey Keene brings to the table, and there is a lot like that. That is a steep learning curve, by the way, to be able to do the types of things that we know Mikey Keene can do. Right, the college game has to be slowed down for you a little bit. You're right, like, because as good as Bryce is, it's like it's going to be a different speed of game. He has to be able to read defenses, make protection calls, a lot of that kind of stuff. And it's going to take a little bit of a learning curve for him to kind of get ready for that. But I'm telling you, you have what Connor told me when he was the OC over at Belleville, that he was already physically there, if not maybe ahead of JJ McCarthy as a 17-year-old still in high school. You have things like, you got to account for the fact that this guy can take off at any point on top of the ball placement. And like, I can't remember which player said it. I think it was Jordan Marshall that said his ball placement is crazy. Maybe it was Derrick Moore. It said like his ball placement is crazy. That is one of those things that is just like, all right, account for it, right? Like he can throw, he has the arm to go deep. He can place it where he wants, and if things break down, he can run, or it can be designed runs. And he's big enough where him running isn't exactly something that you really want to contend with. So it's kind of like hey, pick your poison as far as that's concerned. Good luck. And now there's certain things that we're not going to be able to really, you're really not going to know. But I think in terms of like, will the college game feel slow enough for him? I think that's where he kind of has the benefit of playing against the Michigan defense, which I think will finish top, like I said, top 5, maybe top 3, maybe top 1 this year based off of what it has. So there's a lot there that I think is really working in Michigan's favor. And I just think that the hype is just going to continue growing, and I hope it does, because that gives us something to talk about a lot. The problem is we got to wait to see him, and then we can react. So it's going to be interesting. All right, I think Zuri wants to join the show because she's just been sitting here and getting pet throughout the entire thing. We're going to hear a little bit from I wanted to just more so you could hear his voice, see his face if you're watching on video. We asked Justice Haynes, why leave Alabama? And, why Michigan? And so he gave answers to that. We'll get to that here in just a moment. But before we do, get the supplies you need from the site made for the skilled trade, Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400-plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need, delivered fast and from coast to coast. Need help with your order? Well, Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage, and now it's your turn. So join the Trade Master program. I don't know where my mouse is. There we go. Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use the promo code for SH5 SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. All right, we're probably going to do the mailbag on Friday. Tomorrow, Thursday, we're going to have the King over at Locked On Auburn. Zach Blackerby and I are going to do a crossover episode to talk a little bit of Michigan basketball. It's the Trey Donaldson game. Excited to get to that. But for now, as we kind of wait until tomorrow to start getting hyped up about basketball, we're going to stay on football because we've got lots going on. If we have a mailbag at all this week, which we might not, because we're going to have another player press conference on Friday, so I might say, hey, we're just going to not worry about that, and we'll hit a mailbag next week. I know going a couple weeks without a mailbag, not ideal, but we just got too much going on with the football and the basketball and all of that. But nonetheless, all right, we got to meet Justice Haynes for the first time. Just super impressive kid in general, super impressive just to look at him. He's got a stature. He eats apparently just one ingredients, meals and stuff like that. So I wanted to get into why Michigan? Why did you leave Alabama? And he gave an answer that is after my own heart, of course. So let's listen to what he had to say right.
Justice, why decide to enter the transfer portal, and what was so appealing about Michigan?
Just really, I'm a big faith person, I felt like God was calling me in a different direction in my life, and so I'm just relying on his plan that he had for me. I'm thankful for my time at Alabama. It was an amazing 2.5 years I had there, being coached by Coach Saban, being coached by Coach DeBoer, great people, great men. But Michigan, I fell in love with the place. I knew TA from when I was getting recruited from Ohio State. I came up here, and this is the place I knew I wanted to be as soon as I got here. So, yeah.
All right. So I forgot to include my question, which I thought I did, and I did not. So apologies for that. I have to prepare these things. Can't do it on the fly. This particular thing actually kind of nailed the timing of that. I feel like I deserve a little applause because before the show, I placed the best way for me to do this is I placed the audio where I hope it will go, and then hope I don't have to move it during the show so that I know where it goes. And because we do this thing live, you might not see it live, but we do it live. And leave all the mistakes. I want to treat this show like a radio show. So it's kind of funny that that's why there was like that pause, just waiting until now. Kind of amazing that worked out as close as it did. Anyway, obviously, like I said, an answer after my own heart, mentioning, I prefer the word, the name, not the word, the name Jesus to be proclaimed rather than just God, but that's just me. And I know I'm upsetting the skeptics out there. Don't really care about that. But he kind of went on a little bit more about like how Jordan Marshall really, kind of also played a part because you had, Tony Alford. If you want to, when he says TA, he's talking about Tony Alford and how he played a part, and then Jordan Marshall played a part. And you just love to hear the way that he talks. He's like, man, basically he's like, I'd die for these guys. And you're like, all right. Like it's a real brotherhood already. Like he's already a part of it. And you listen to Jordan Marshall talk about him too. He's like, oh, he came in as a leader. I asked Sherrod Moore about him on Monday, and he's like, Justice Haynes is a leader. And that's really impressive that you can come in from Alabama. And like part of it, I think, is like, I asked him about how does Alabama differ from Michigan? Especially I want to know after, he was coached by Nick Saban, right? The GOAT. And he's like, in a lot of ways, really no difference. Like it's both are highly regimented with a lot of the things that they do and all of that, really not different. And you especially want to hear that right now because you want to have a situation where it's like, okay, I was on 2 Alabama teams that were pretty good. I know they didn't make the playoff last year, but it was on one that made the college football playoff and played Michigan. They were an inch away from being in the playoff last year and then lost to Michigan, which, by the way, go check out on Wolverines Wire. Interesting dichotomy. I asked him about, like, he was already asked, like, playing against Michigan, give your impressions. But I asked him, I said, you committed to Michigan right before the bowl game. So how awkward is that? How weird is that, right? Like, who did you root for? What did you do? But I just think that, like, you can kind of take away, like, he's impressive in kind of every way. He's impressive in the way that he handles himself, the way that he carries himself. He's impressive in like his dedication. Like Derrick Moore talked about, like, it's kind of scary, like Justice Haynes and like the things that he does. Like he's a different kind of strong. You have Sherrod Moore saying he eats one ingredient meals and that's why he looks like a statue. All of those types of things. And it's like, there's just so much that you just look at and be like, if this guy isn't wildly successful, especially right now, a new team, everyone's embracing the leadership and all of that, I would be surprised. Not to get into the Doug Karsh, Dontrell Willis, I think he's going to be a fan favorite thing. But like, certainly, like, I have a hard time just like, you see like this mentality that he has where he's just like, I think it was Derrick, maybe it was Jordan, I don't know. We talked to 3 people. It wasn't Justice himself that said like, yeah, he's you can basically only find him in like 3 places. He's either like in it working out, he's in the training room, or he's watching film. That's it. Like he's not doing anything else. He's doing one of those 3 things. And that should tantalize you, especially for all the people who used to always like hate on the idea of players having lives outside of football or whatever. Like, maybe, just beat Ohio State crowd from before Michigan started just beating Ohio State. They always were just like, what are you doing walking to class? You should be preparing to win games, right? Well, it sounds like Justice Haynes does exactly that. Unbelievably impressive. Speaking of unbelievably impressive, I was impressed with the way that Jordan Marshall handled himself in terms of, hey, they brought in Justice Haynes. Like, what's your reaction? Do you want to start? And he's like, I don't care if I start or not. He's like, both of us are going to play. Both of us are going to have an opportunity. We're going to win games. That's the most important thing. Well, what did you think when they're bringing in Justice Haynes? And he's like, I loved it because I could have rested on my laurels from just like, hey, I went up against the Alabama defense and had a really good game. And now I'm the next big thing, right? The next big X factor for this Michigan football team. I absolutely could have just, been like, yeah, but now I have to like be on my P's and Q's in order to get better to make sure that I can still have a spot to go out there and play. Mentality of this team, we talked last week about culture kind of still feeling like it's more in that 2023 mentality. I know things are a lot different. No JJ McCarthy, no Blake Corum, no Chris Jenkins, no Mikey Sainristil still. Completely different team, but like culturally, it really kind of feels like they are with new faces that weren't even around for the old culture, with, different head coach, all of that. It still feels like it's on the same trajectory. So let's continue along those lines, as well as thinking about what we heard today. We're going to do that here in just a moment. But before we do, ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all of my money go between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment? It is super easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place so you can just stop managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery. Now I budget smarter and save more, although that is negligible. Jury is out there. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. All right, so this felt like one of the more substantial press conferences that we had, right? Because like you had 3 guys, all leaders on the team. Derrick Moore's a little quiet. By the way, I want to put this out there. I said this today, like as he walked away or whatever. I said I'm just disappointed that we didn't get to ask him about his role in the new Captain America movie. Maybe I don't think I'm wrong. I think he looks just like Anthony Mackie in so many ways. It's like jarring to me. Like I'm just sitting there watching it and I feel like I'm watching, Captain America. That's how I feel. So I just kind of wanted to spread that out there. But you just get this mentality, like this was 30 minutes with 3 players and it just, everything that was said felt substantial. And there's personality, but it's not personality over team. I think that's what it used to be. No offense to 2016 or 2018, but like, like I felt like the personalities were bigger, but then the results weren't what the results were. And I don't think those things are like inextricably correlated or anything like that, but it does feel like everyone's just pulling in the same direction. And that's not easy. And again, it's hard to really gauge from the outside looking in, but like this couldn't be more of an impressive. Like honestly, all the players we've gotten so far have kind of been that. it's and I know it's easy in spring ball to be there, but I can, as someone who's been around some of these fractured teams that were under Harbaugh, right? Like 16 and 18 were really good teams. Those weren't fractured teams. 17 was absolutely fractured, and you could feel it. 19 had some fractures, and you could feel it. 2020, harder to feel it because it was all over Zoom, but you could tell. And especially when things start going wrong, like you could feel it. Last year, obviously didn't go great, but you could still feel the unity. It wasn't a problem of culture, everybody moving in the same direction. It was more of a problem of them just not having the right talent, and as well as first year head coach figuring things out, first year defensive coordinator at the college level, not just first year ever, but like going from 20 something years in the NFL to figuring out how to work with college kids, all that kind of stuff. This just felt like it felt like it took some time for everybody to get on that actual same page and know how to handle things. And now it just feels like everybody is. So the question then it becomes talent, right? Does Michigan have the talent? Quarterback, they absolutely do. It's going to be a matter of execution. Wide receiver, it's a little bit more negligible, but more shout outs for both Jamar Browder and Donovan McCulley today. Again, if Michigan can have 2 6'5" receivers be in the game at the same time, I mean, you don't even need them in the game at the same time, but just to always have a 6'5" receiver out there is going to just, it's going to make your ability to stretch the field that much better. So you have that. And then and that's not even mentioning Andrew Marsh, who was pictured in Michigan, posted something that I thought about doing a segment overreacting to it, but they had 4 pictures saying touchdowns, 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 and touchdowns. Andrew Marsh was one of them, as well as Jalen Hoffman. I didn't recognize the other 2, but nonetheless, like there's a lot that makes you feel like, okay, they all were catches too, so that's good news. Using Jalen Hoffman in the pass game, that could be interesting. I know a lot of you don't know who he is. He's the backup fullback, so technically a tight end. And everyone was asking in the comments section who's throwing the ball. Well, you'll find out sooner than later, right? I just feel like this team, it has some question marks. They're poised at quarterback for sure to be much, much better. Wide receiver, we'll see what they do in the transfer portal, right? Things are a little bit different. Maybe some guys hit the portal that we weren't thinking. I still feel pretty good about Skylar Bell probably hitting the portal again. I feel like that's a strong possibility. Maybe he's not the only one. That room could look different. We'll see. But then it's offensive line. I feel great about the defense. I don't we're just kind of writing that and putting that off into the corner and saying the defense is going to be fine. So then it just comes down to the offense. And I feel like there are a lot of pieces. And I think one of the great parts of it are 2 of the guys that we talked to today, Justice Haynes and Jordan Marshall. I feel like that is a 1-2 duo, regardless of what order you put them in, that is going to help you succeed. Now, we've seen a little bit of Haynes at Alabama. We saw one game from Jordan Marshall, and rewatching some of the Alabama game makes me feel a little bit better than how I felt on the field, because it felt like a lot of tough yards. And then you're watching, so you're watching on TV, you probably got a better sense of how well he was doing compared to me being on the field, just because everything was so bunched up. The Alabama defense had really taken away those lanes, and he still made plays. Kind of hard to see through a camera lens in the end zone. But nonetheless, I think Michigan's in good hands. If they can figure out a couple of those things, we already can see the culture. And if Justice Haynes is one of the leaders on this team, you feel really good about it. I would not be surprised if he's named a team captain. Would not. Even as a junior, as a transfer, he has that type of thing where you can see Derrick Moore is wowed by his work ethic. Jordan Marshall was also wowed by his work ethic. That's all good stuff. Anyway, that's going to do it for us today. Like I said, we'll be doing some basketball stuff with Zach Blackerby. For you old school people, it used to be him and I on Tuesdays doing Locked On College Football in 2020. So excited to bring the band back together. All right, so anyway, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We will talk to you tomorrow. Peace.